Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Montana After Midnight. Today I'm going to be taking some user submitted scary stories, some real life paranormal-ish encounters that you guys have left in my community tab, as well as answering a couple of community questions that I've gotten in my videos and a very specific post I made in my community tab. And this is basically just celebrating 1 year of Montana After Midnight and the new year of 2026. This is a little bit different than my normal videos where I talk about something very significant in Montana's history. Today it's going to be all about you guys and a little bit about me, because I'm also going to be sharing some of my scary paranormal encounters that I've had in my own life. So I hope you guys do enjoy this more community-centric video on Montana After Midnight. Let's get into it. Also, really quick, I need to shout out my wonderful grandma. I found out that she's been watching a lot of my YouTube videos, and I told her in the family group chat that I would give her a shout out because she said that she likes them so much. So shout out to you, Grandma. I hope you like this video and what comes of Montana After Midnight in the future. Let's start off by just jumping into some of your guys' submitted scary stories. Some of these are a little bit longer than others, but let's start with one that happened in Great Falls. I lived in a 2-story historic house in downtown Great Falls growing up. At some point in time in the early 1910s, it was an orphanage. I used to hear something running back and forth down the hallway on the 2nd story's wooden floors. Always chalked it up to just the cats or the dogs, until one day me and my brother were sitting on the couch with both cats and the dog there as well, and we heard something running up and down the hallway again. Also, my brother's room had a closet door that would randomly open a little bit at night. Another thing that would get dismissed with it's an old house just settling. Doesn't get more typical haunted house than that. I also lived in a house that was around 100 years old. My parents still actually live in that house, and it was very creepy at night. I would see people. I wouldn't see people. I would see like shadows of people when I walked past a window too fast at night, and I'd have to do a double take. Also, living in those 100-year-old houses, I remember distinctly every night if I went to go use the bathroom, I would rip open the shower curtain just so I knew that there wasn't some ghost thing hiding behind the shower curtain in my bathtub in my ancient house. Although I'm pretty sure people have died in my specific house, it definitely wasn't an orphanage. That pushes this a little bit over the edge, and hearing little kids running above you on the 2nd story is pretty creepy. But this is a perfect submission about a haunted old house that I think we all can kind of relate to at some point in our lives. Maybe not your house, but your grandparents' house or something like that. So shout out to Nick There's 4180 for submitting that first creepy Great Falls orphanage haunting. Now we're going to move on to one that didn't quite take place in Montana, but has a little bit of mystery to it. They really left me hanging on the edge of my seat. They didn't give too many details with this one, but it kind of builds off of our last submission. This one comes from Marcus Schaefer 9712, not in Montana, but one of my clients' house had this really eerie feeling and weird stuff kept happening. Felt like I was being watched, rooms would go cold all of a sudden, and stuff would get moved. I was the only person in the house at the time. Found out that someone had died in that house, and it was a suspicious death. Got out and never went back. First couple things with this submission, like I said, they really leave it very ominous. Someone died in the house of suspicious causes. What does that mean? I would need to know more about this. Was someone murdered? What's going on? A suspicious death? But maybe the suspicious death is why it was left so vague. Don't want to blow this guy's life up because his client killed somebody. It's obviously wild speculation and I'm just being dramatic. But yeah, so someone died in this house and it was suspicious death. Another thing that builds off of Nick's Great Falls story with this one is that it gives us some of the other typical paranormal events that happen in haunted houses. Things like rooms or areas going cold all of a sudden. And then, like I mentioned with my old house, feeling like you're being watched all the time. The same way I would look in my window and think I see a shadow figure outside. This guy felt watched all the time in his client's house. And it's also always weird being in a house alone that you're not used to. Like the temperature isn't even set to how you want your house's temperature to be. Like little things like that just make things super weird. It feels uncanny staying at someone else's house when you're all alone. It truly does, in my opinion. So another great submission of just a super typical paranormal feeling that you get being in a maybe haunted house that had a suspicious death attached to it. And then he comes in again, glad that he doesn't work there anymore, and this is what convinced him that there was an afterlife. Once we get to my story at the very end of this video, I'll have something to say about this, because not until I started having these paranormal events did I ever like really think about the afterlife or ghosts. So stay tuned for my story at the end of this video. We're going to stay outside of Montana for this one, actually very far outside of Montana, and then we're going to circle back to a sorority house that was haunted in Montana, in Missoula, Montana, for our last submission. I think that one's the most in-depth, but we're going to circle around to Ireland and talk about a Banshee. This submission comes from Bold and Bright. It starts off with, not in Montana, but I am Irish, and my great granny saw a Banshee in her garden. There's loads of weird and cool shit out there, except they said shite. I just didn't have my accent loaded and ready to go, I guess. And like I said, I responded that I'm 95% Irish, and I thought that was really cool. But my question was, what is a Banshee? Obviously, being American, I didn't really know what Irish folklore of a Banshee would entail, and I was envisioning some like creepy werewolf type creature, but it actually turns out that a Banshee is more of a shrieking woman that warns of death. This could either be a good or a bad thing. This woman could either be an old hag or a beautiful woman, friend or foe. Some people believe that the Banshee is warning you, and then maybe you can do something to prevent the death, or you know that it's coming. And other people believe that the Banshee is the thing that's like casting death upon you. So very interesting. Maybe I'll do some reading up about Banshees. I hope that Bold and Bright's granny made it out okay and didn't soon die after seeing the Banshee. Like I said, this last submission comes from Missoula, Montana, and has to do with a haunted sorority. This submission is from Impressions of Time, and this is how the story goes. The sorority I'm a part of has the spooky story of a spirit that haunts the chapter house. We believe the ghost is Maria, a foreign exchange student from Southern Europe. She passed in her home country but loved our sorority and her experience so much that she chose to keep haunting us. When I lived in a double, our door would always open up on its own. I also didn't like to be in the room by myself because I would get this feeling that someone was watching me. She's probably really friendly and wants to just hang out with us. However, I still feel spooked often. And I responded with, "That's crazy." Despite my lackluster comment, I think this one was the most in-depth story that I got so far. With the least amount of speculation, I got a whole story of this Maria exchange student. It seems a little bit more myth than realistic history that happened in Missoula, Montana, but I do like the idea of just blaming your door opening or all these weird spooky feelings, maybe the room going cold, on a friendly ghost that just loves being in your house so much. So thanks again to Impressions of Time. And they did mention that their door would open up on its own, and that bleeds perfectly into my own scary story that I'll be telling after I read off some comments and questions that you guys have left for me. The first question that I'm going to start with is, which video was your favorite to make? There's a couple different categories that I could break things into, but I have to shout out the Night of the Grizzlies. This was my only video to do extremely well. Has about 60,000 views, which is thousands of percent better than some of my other videos, and it was really in depth. I love the way that I told the story. It was one of a couple videos where perfection was the goal, and it's funny because now I look back at it and there are a million things that I would change, but it was one that I really stuck my teeth into, and I was like, I want to get this perfect. Of course, my goal with all my videos is to do a really good job, but going for perfect means it's going to take a month to make as opposed to taking like a week to make. And I did that for Night of the Grizzlies, and I think it really paid off. Another video that I did that exact same thing for was the Mangled Fire video that I made, and that simply just has not done the same numbers as Night of the Grizzlies, although it has been out for a lot less time, so who knows, maybe that video will blow up. Now, another category of video that qualifies as my favorite video to make would be videos where I actually went on site. There's 3 videos that I did this in. One was the Deer Lodge, Montana State Prison video, where I went with 5 of my friends and we did a tour of this haunted prison, and that was pretty freaking awesome. Another one was when your wife decides that you're not coming back from a hike. I titled it something like that, and this was a true crime story of a wife murdering her husband of like a week in Glacier National Park. I think it's cool that it happened in Glacier, and I also went on site, went on the exact hike that they did. That also tied into Night of the Grizzlies because the hike led to where one of the bear attacks in Night of the Grizzlies actually occurred. So it was a cool little part 2, Night of the Grizzlies 1.5, and the third video that I went on site for was the Garnet Ghost Town, where I went with my little brother, and that one was super awesome as well. And then if I was gonna do a third favorite video, it'd be cattle mutilations. The reason why I like my cattle mutilations video so much is because it has a little bit of everything. It could be a government psyop, it could be aliens, it could be Bigfoot, it could be cryptids. You know, like, you never know what these cattle mutilations could be, although there is a scientific argument that it's just purely naturally occurring things. But the cattle mutilations video had a little bit of everything, and I still think it's one of my most underrated videos. So yeah, top 3 favorite videos probably would be Night of the Grizzlies, when your wife tries to make sure you don't return from your hike, and then cattle mutilations. Going in the opposite direction, which video was my least favorite? And I have to go with my very first video ever made, which is on the Dumas brothel. And the reason why it's my least favorite is because I took like 1 day to make it. Now, editing and everything came into play later, but in terms of researching and recording, literally just took 1 day. The video is like 6 minutes, definitely my shortest video by far. It's just one of those things where your first is always going to be your worst, and then you look back and you're like, oh, what was I thinking? This is horrible. But that means that maybe one day I'm going to return to the Dumas brothel and I'll make a new video on it. I will do an honorable mention. This isn't my least favorite because it's bad and I did a bad job on it, but it's very disappointing. So like I said with the Night of the Grizzlies, I tried to make that video perfect and I thought it was going to blow up, and it did. My next big idea was the Deer Lodge prison videos, and I made a whole series out of it. I think like 3 30-minute videos. At least one of them might have been 40 minutes, one of them might have been 20 minutes, but it was a whole series, definitely over an hour long, and these videos just did not take off. The only thing that made those videos worth it is, again, I went on site with my friends, which was awesome. So I guess the Deer Lodge prison video gets a shout out in my least favorite and favorite video to make, but for very different reasons. Third question, and this is a great one, is that the music from Scary Interesting? Yes, it is. It's called Creep, and it's on YouTube Music. It's in their library. If you ever try to make a video on YouTube, they have like a whole bunch of free music you can use. And I noticed that it was the music from Scary Interesting as well, but I used it because it's literally perfect for scary, interesting videos, just like that guy's channel's name. And yes, I'm a huge YouTube addict, and I watch a lot of creepy things like Scary Interesting. I also watch Wendigoon and a whole bunch of other creepy YouTube videos and people that make creepy YouTube videos. And I just happen to use the same song as Scary Interesting, who makes pretty fun and interesting videos on YouTube. Highly recommend that you guys check them out. The fourth question that I have is one I got on one of my YouTube videos, and it was basically, dude, where are you from? This is the excited version of another question that I got that was like, are you even from Montana? Do you even live in Montana? Because the channel is Montana After Midnight. So I'll answer the nice version first. Dude, where you from? Currently living in Missoula, lived here the last like 3 years, went to school here, graduated from the University of Montana. Before that was living in Big Fork, Montana, working seasonally. And that's how I got my start out here in 2020. Before that, now answering the meaner version of this question that's like, dude, are you from here? No, I'm from California. Just kidding. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I lived in the suburbs of Chicago, pretty traditional middle-class family, went to community college, eventually was going to go to Illinois State University, and that's when COVID hit, and I started working out seasonally here in Montana, and I just fell in love with it, going from flat suburb life in the Midwest to the beautiful land of the big sky the treasure state of Montana. You know, how could I ever go back? So I made a lot of friends in Big Fork and eventually decided to continue my schooling at the University of Montana. And I feel like my values just align with Montana very strongly. And that's part of the reason why I started Montana After Midnight. I love scary, interesting things. Shout out to my last question. And I love Montana, so why not combine them and make a YouTube channel on Montana's scary, interesting things. Lastly, this isn't a question I got asked, but I figured I'd bring it up. What's coming out for the channel? I'm going to continue to make videos on Montana's weird history. I might branch out into some other states. We'll see. I want it to all connect back to Montana. I'm doing this all by myself and I don't want to stretch it all too thin. I also have started uploading all these videos to Spotify because a lot of people will just listen to what I say. So you can find Montana After Midnight on Spotify. I'll be posting my backlog every Monday. Then every video that comes out after this will also be coming out on Mondays. So I might double up the Mondays. So if you'd rather just listen, check out Spotify Montana After Midnight. I'll link that below as well. In terms of certain topics, I'm thinking of the Unabomber, although that would be super long. A serial killer tier list, which again would be super long. I actually looked into the Missoula Mauler, which I always think it should be the Missoula Marauder, but it's the Missoula Mauler. And those serial killers get pretty freaking dark, dude. So that's gonna be a very low tone, very serious video that might take a while to come out. I might talk about some national park tragedies, as those are always super interesting. We could talk about Yellowstone or Glacier. We never know what's going to come, but I'll try to make a video every 2 weeks and keep things going. With the question and answer section over, which by the way, feel free to leave any scary stories in the comments of this video, any questions in the comments of this video. That way I have more if I want to do another one of these in a couple of months. That'd be pretty cool, guys. But now I'm going to talk about my firsthand accounts, my scary stories that I've experienced. And this one is in Montana. But before I do that, maybe I'll make it a little bit creepier in here. I have LED light sticks over there that I could turn on, but I couldn't find the remote. Unless it's over here. Yeah, I couldn't find the remote, so we're just going to go with slightly darker. So my scary story that occurred in Big Fork, Montana, this is when I was working seasonally. Now, how it works is they have a whole bunch of different buildings that are used to house staff members. And usually over the summer, there's 20 people in the same building as you, sometimes sharing a room, sometimes get your own room. But then over the winter, they'll extend an invite to certain people, or you could reach out to them and be like, hey, I want to stay the winter. You sign a contract saying you'll work the next year as well, and you can stay the winter for fairly cheap rent, especially in Big Fork, Montana. If you live in Montana, you know that the housing and rent prices have just been like going crazy. So kind of a huge deal to just stay the winter in seasonal housing. So that's the setting. It's the winter. I just made it back to the seasonal housing. Just started moving things into my room. I just went on a big road trip, which concluded my summertime job, and I was breaking into my winter off time. And with that, there was pretty much no one else in the house. It was me, maybe one other person, and it kind of slept like 6 to 8 people, although everyone got their own room this time, so there were supposed to be 5 or 6 other people in this house with me. They just hadn't moved in yet. It's my first night after moving into this winter housing. It's just me and my twin size bed, maybe a couple boxes with my crap in it, still not unpacked because I just moved in. Now, one key detail about this haunted story is the fact that this staff housing that I was in, this whole building, was the old Big Fork funeral home. So there was, I'm sure, plenty of dead folk that were brought in through this building that were hopefully, and you would imagine, taken care of respectfully. And, you know, it was honestly a good thing, you know, giving people funerals so they can pass on respectfully and, you know, on the up and up. When I go to sleep in my twin-sized bed, I experience for the first time ever sleep paralysis, and specifically a sleep paralysis demon, which, if you didn't know, Sleep paralysis is when you're basically half awake, like you can see the whole room around you, you feel awake mentally, but your body will not move. You are paralyzed despite your brain being active in the real world. And the sleep paralysis demon is when you see a figure in the room with you. That happens to me in the middle of the night, my first night in the old Big Fork funeral home. And while I'm sleeping in my bed, not able to move, looking around in the corner of my eye, not like a distinct vision of a person, but in the corner of my eye, I see an old woman, like a scary old woman. She was not there with good intentions. After reading the comments today, maybe she was a Banshee. I can't remember if anyone died after that, but as my eyes slowly were able to move closer to where she was, I distinctly remember not being able to move, and then she yanks my leg and pulls me straight out of the bed. And then I'm struggling on the floor. I'm freaking out. Now, after a buildup of tension and I'm yanked on the floor and I'm struggling and I'm moving, I wake up in the exact same position I was when I had sleep paralysis, but now I had permission to move for whatever reason. It's almost like Final Destination, if you've seen those movies. They see a vision of the future and then they wake up exactly before they saw that vision. That's what this felt like. I was in bed and then I was yanked out of bed by my sleep paralysis demon. And then after that all happened, I woke up in the exact same position and my room looked exactly the same as when I first was yanked out of bed, but this time there was no creepy woman and I was actually able to move my body. This wasn't the only time I had sleep paralysis or felt a spirit in the same room, but this is the only sleep paralysis story I'm going to tell you this time because my other one is a little scarier and I want to save it in my back pocket. In this same funeral home while sleeping in the second level, so a completely different setup. It's actually drastic how much the top and the bottom of this old funeral home staff housing was. But in the second level, where everyone kind of had their own little rooms, that kind of 80s style, like wood paneling on the sides and everything, I had my own room on the second floor, and this was during the summer, so way less scary because there's 30 other people in this house with you. You're not by yourself. But overnight, many nights, my door would creep open. Sometimes I'd even be on my computer watching a YouTube video or a movie, and then my door would just creak open and no one would be there. No one was opening it. It was completely closed all the way, and it would just find its way open. The amount of times that I had went to bed at night and then woken up to my door half open was alarming. And at the beginning, being communal housing and no lock on my door, I was like, is someone coming in my room and watching me sleep? But like I said, there were certain times where I was awake and I saw the door open with no one being behind it. So clearly it was just an old house with a lot of creepy things happening. Was it a spirit from someone that had been worked on in the funeral home, or was it just an old house? I don't know. You tell me. But yeah, that's my scary story. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Once again, this was my first and only ever community-focused video. Let me know if you want to hear more of these stories, comments, or whatever. Just make sure to leave some if you have any so I can talk about them in the future. I really appreciate you guys sticking around. And if you're here, you might as well check out some of my other videos. It's been a pleasure talking to you, sharing my scary story. And once again, shout out Grandma. Have a wonderful day.